What we'll do, we'll go to questions and answers in just a minute. We'll let the authors introduce themselves. I haven't even introduced myself. I'm Richard Walsh, Mr. Mad Mick 15, YouTube. Ooh, I got like 30 subscribers. I don't really care. We'll let the authors introduce themselves, tell a little bit about their books. I'll be out here in the aisle. Come to me. You can ask them a question. Oh, I'm sorry, I got to go back. Come to me. No one gets the mic. That's the rule. We've learned that over the years because usually we get like a 20-minute dissertation on your opinion of the Constitution. No one paid to hear A, me talk, or B, you talk. We paid to hear them and Dr. Forston. So no one gets the mic. So don't take it personal when I don't give you the mic because it's just the way it's going to work. I think that's about all the announcements I have. Oh, also Carolina Readiness. Wow, that's hot. Carolina Readiness will be open tomorrow. So if you want to pick any last minute items up, Carolina Readiness will be open at 72 Montgomery Street, downtown Waynesville. And now, without further ado, this is Dirty Dozen. These are post-apocalyptic writers, every one of them. I'm sure most of us has heard of them. I have spent hours with these people. In my job, I drive around a lot. I listen to these people. They're on the loop constantly. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them, not so much. But you'll like them. I mean, most of them are house trained. Some of them can even read. But they're good. Without further ado, ladies first.
So I have to make a true confession. I'm neither dirty nor a dozen. And I saw my name on the list, and I said, who the heck is Linda Zern? This is an esteemed group. I am not in the group, but I am Linda Zern. I write prepper fiction for young adults and teenagers. I write the Strandline series, and I hope someone asks me what Strandline means.
What does Strandline mean?
Oh, I'm so happy you asked. So I'm from Florida, and that line
Sorry.
on the... Yes, I'm a native, so I have to be there. That line on the beach after high tide is gone is the strand line. It's all that seaweed that's left. We like to call that the line where the bodies are. But we also like to say that that's where the best treasures are to be found. So I like to try to write prepper fiction with a little bit of a hopeful ending and a hopeful message.
My name's AJ Stewart. I'm in the same boat she is. I literally just found out about the show and this whole community last week. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. I just published my first book last month. It's called Hey Brother, and it takes place in Cashiers, North Carolina. If anybody knows where that is, it's about an hour from here. Cashiers becomes one of the last few safe places to cross the mountains. The story takes place 4 years after the United States is wiped off the map. Cashiers is one of the few safe places left, and the National Guard, in the interest of reestablishing a central government, wants to take control of the area and protect it and keep it safe. But as everybody knows, things don't always turn out the way you plan them to, and things go south very quickly. So I'm very excited to be here with this incredible group of people, and it's just a great time.
She didn't talk long enough. My name's Jeff Motes. I'm an electrician and an electrical engineer by training and an author by accident. My first foray into prepper fiction was back in high school in 1977. I read a book by Pat Frank called Alaska Babylon. And that began my journey studying preparedness. In an effort to help family and friends prepare themselves for difficult times, I started writing a series of short stories on Facebook, trying to get them to think about what they might do. Well, I just kept writing, and to where I am now with a series called Once Upon an Apocalypse, and there's 3 books in that series. I believe there's 3 aspects to being prepared: spiritual, mental, and physical. And what I've tried to provide in this series of books is a hard-hitting, fast-moving story that presents various characters with different mindsets who encompass these aspects to various degrees. And while the stories are not religious in content, the main characters are Christian, and that Christian view influences how they react to the events unfolding around them and how they interact with each other. Now, I wrote the story a little different than probably most are written. I wrote it as a first-person perspective from each of the main characters in the book. I'm trying to give you their point of view of the events as they unfold around them. And I'm also trying to put you into the minds of these characters so you can understand what their mindsets are and how that affects their ability to react to the things that are happening. It's a fast-moving story. It's got a little prepper stuff thrown into the storyline, but it's an interesting story. Check it out on Amazon. Read the reviews. If it's of interest to you, check it out. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Akers, and I wrote the SHTF series. I'm on book 3 at the moment, and I look for something to procrastinate writing because writing is hard, so I opened up the Dirty Dozen, where I can herd these cats here, and they keep me entertained. If anybody wants to check it out, it's on Facebook. DD12 is in the house. We've taken over your campground. We're taking over Waynesville.
Yeah, and then we'll leave this place, hopefully, in one piece. Yeah, we're not run out, or not invited back. My name is Boyd Craven. I started writing prepper fiction with The World Burns. I think right now I've got 28 titles out under my name. I've been writing since I was a kid, but I've only been publishing since like 2011. So I've got a few other pen names that I write under, but Boyd's the one that's prepper fiction. Yeah, you don't want to know the other names.
No, you don't want to know your rights either.
No. But I kind of grew up, the household was kind of homesteading, you know. We had animals, you know, meat, rabbits, chickens. We'd grow our own food, and we'd always put away for hard times, and that was never different for us because we would have, like, you know, the shop would lay people off every summer for 2 or 3 months, and we had to be able to get through it. So, I mean, it kind of was a way of life for me growing up. So starting to write it was, I don't know, kind of second nature for me. Hope.
I'm Chad Rudolph. I write under C.A. Rudolph. I started writing post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction, I guess, about 1.5 years ago. And, well, I started writing earlier. I was published in December of 2016, my first book, What's Left of My World. I didn't know what was going to happen when I published it. As an independent author, nobody really does. And 30 days after it went on Amazon, it hit bestseller on post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction. It was very surprising to me. And from there on, I just decided, okay, I'm just gonna keep on doing it. This is a surreal experience for me. I'm kind of like Ashley right now because I've never had a face-to-face author event before. I've worked behind a computer. I've worked behind a telephone. I've never actually talked to my readers face-to-face before. And I want to thank everybody who's it's been a very warm welcome for me. I've had a great time the past couple of days. Can't wait to see most of you guys back tomorrow. If you show up, it'll be fantastic. I've really enjoyed signing books. I've never done that before either. It's been phenomenal. The other reason it's surreal for me is because there's at least 2 guys that are sitting here right now, namely Chris Weatherman and Franklin Horton, who were chief inspirations for me to even do this in the first place. So being a part of this team with them, and it's basically a dream that's just kind of come true. The one thing I do want to point out is that while a lot of us aren't what you would consider experts in the fields that we write in, we are expert storytellers. And one of the things I heard Franklin say one time was that he writes stories that make people think. And if it can make you think differently than what most people think on a regular routine day, then mission accomplished. So.
Yeah.
Hey folks, my name is Steve Bird, or Stephen Bird if you wish to have to type it into someone. This is my third HLS. I'd do anything Jan and the folks at Carolina Writers do. I love those people, love this place. It's one of the best shows we do, and hands down, you guys are the best. But started writing, or published my first book in March of 2014. That was the last layover. It was I was an airline pilot at the time, and when you travel by airplane and you're subject to TSA's rules, you can't have the ultimate bug-out bag in the trunk if something was to go wrong. And I was generally always overnighting in New York or Chicago, or the last worst case scenario, last place you want to be. So that first book was really just written as a hobby, and it was a projection of my own thoughts and my own plans and my own fears, and that kind of grew and evolved into I'm writing number 11 now. Not all in the same series, but all in the same ideological plane. So it's been a wonderful journey, and a lot of people I've met along the way. I've met pretty much everybody in this room probably 2 or 3 times. There's a few that I haven't, but this whole time it feels like just old friends keep coming by the table, and just love this event, love these folks, and all the people on stage too. I appreciate every single one of you that come by and say positive things to us and give us a little reinforcement to keep us going. So it's been a wonderful part of my life, and I greatly appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mom.
We love Steve, don't we? Hello, my name is Doug Hogan. I write under the pen name L. Douglas Hogan. There's a very small group of people up here that knows what the L stands for. I'm not going to share it with you. They might giggle, and I'm not. Yeah, she knows for sure. She'll make it live on Facebook at some point. I'm not from here. I'm from Illinois. I'm not necessarily proud of that.
The S is silent.
Anybody that says Illinois, they're not from Illinois. I'm just throwing that out there. I do plan on retiring in 5 years. I know I don't look like I'm 46 years old. I have a 24-year-old in my basement. He likes living at home. I have a 16-year-old that can't wait to leave. So they're very diverse individuals. I joined the Marines in 1992, and I served from 92 to 96. Just by show of hands, how many of you know G. Michael Hoff or have read something G. Michael Hoff or are familiar with him as an author? Okay, so G. Michael Hoff, I was searching for him. His name is Jeff, spelled G-E-O-F-F, and I had spent, when Facebook was first developed, I made a habit of trying to locate every person I ever served in the Marines with, and that was hard when you're punching J-E-F-F, looking for Jeff. I could never find him. Well, one day I'm talking with another guy that I was in the Marines with, and he says, yeah, he's PMing me on Facebook. He says, it's G-E-O-F-F, Hoff, yeah, he's a pretty cool sergeant. So I'm like, oh man, I shot myself in the head, and I punched that in, looked for him, and said, he came up on Amazon as a best-selling author. So naturally I emailed him, and he emailed me back, and from that, we just started communicating. For about a year and a half, we just kind of talked to each other. So it's now 2015. He says, you really need, because I have been writing books for a long time. He says, not books, but just writing, and I really wanted to be a published author. I just couldn't afford it. He says, you really need to write a book. And I said, I don't know, what to write about. He says, well, give it some thought, think about it. He said, I'll walk you through the process. He says, it's not as difficult as you think. It's not going to cost as much as you think. So I did that, and he kind of walked me through the process of my first book, Oath Takers. Show of hands again. How many people in here are veterans? Thank you. I honor you. Thank you for your service. I don't care if it's in the Navy.
Go Navy.
I was in the Marines. We're brothers. We pick on each other. That's what we do. I love you if you're in the Navy or not. Coast Guard, same thing. So I wrote Oath Takers for you, and my version of an America without Oath Takers is quite grim. And so after I had published Oath Takers, it had become an Amazon bestseller. And he said, this is great. You really should consider writing fiction. And I said, I don't know if I could write fiction. He says, give it a try. I went to bed that night, and I just stared at the ceiling for I don't know how long. Finally, this huge storyline started to kind of pile up in my head. And of course, it's all based on Oath Takers. Oath Takers to me was a very passionate book for me to write because, first of all, I had served in the Marines 4 years. I had 10 years of law enforcement experience, both in municipal and county as a sheriff's deputy. I had sworn an oath 3 times, twice for the police in different departments and once in the military. I'm very passionate about the Constitution and upholding constitutional laws. I just want to throw that out there, make that very, very clear. There's a difference between things that are between laws and constitutional laws. I was very passionate about that. So this story about the Tyrant series began to grow in my head, and I began to put something together. And of course, it started in an area I'm familiar with, Southern Illinois, with some on a homestead with some individuals who are living in a farm just trying to survive under martial law. And that became this huge conglomerate of information that I had to pile up into 5 books. The Tyrant trilogy is the main storyline, books 1, 2, and 3. And then, of course, there's some characters in there that needed their own book. So the fans wanted something more, so I gave them some more. I wrote Tori's Journey, which is a collection of 5 short stories, and then eventually I wrote Blood Core, which is Tori Cunningham, her own novel, and she lives in the aftermath of the Tyrant series. And the Tyrant series, just in a nutshell, is my vision of an America if oath takers, oath keepers don't do their job, don't uphold the Constitution, and then they don't honor their oath. It's a very grim picture, and it's very real, and there's very factual information if you read the Tyrant series, all the way from the executive orders that are in the back of the book. They're very real, and they've been written, and they're just sitting there waiting for some president to say this is a crisis, and this is the executive order that we need to utilize at this time. So that's my story, my book's in a nutshell. I'm going to pass this on to Frank Horton.
Thank you, sir. My name is Franklin Horton. I've been coming to HLS now for 3 years, just like Steve. I wrote a series called The Borrowed World. I wrote a series called Locker 9, and I have a new book out called Random Acts. A lot of the things that Steve said are true for me also, because when you're writing books, you're alone, you're hoping there's somebody out there who's interested in them. But 3 years ago, when Jan invited me to come here, these are my people. I've found the people who are on the same mission that I'm on, and they're on the same journey that I'm on, and I have met some of the best real-world friends that I've ever made here at this event. And a lot of the people that I've met over the years, we've continued to talk throughout the year and go places together and hang out. And this has just been a life-changing thing for me. And I really extend the same thanks to Jan and Bill that Steve did, because we've been to a lot of preparedness events around the country, been to a lot of different places, meeting people, and this event is one of a kind. This is a very special thing. Just the whole atmosphere is amazing here, and I really appreciate being able to be a part of this, and I appreciate the welcome that you all extend to us, because that is nowhere else but here. And thank you.
He ain't no mystery. We know it. My name's Chris, and I'm an alcoholic. Wrong meeting. Well, I've been doing this since, I think, I don't remember when I started, 2011 or 12 or blacked out, something like that. I've been coming here for 5 or 6 years. I missed 1 or 2 because I was in other places. But when I got started, there wasn't a whole lot of people doing this, and we've got an awesome crowd of people up on the stage, tonight that are now writing in this genre, and I think it's awesome because nobody can tell the only story that needs to be told, and Lord knows I can't write fast enough to keep you guys happy, so I'm glad they're picking up the slack.
That was good. Handling a scar.
No, a lot of these guys are my friends, and I communicate with them daily. I've met some new ones today, like meeting Janie. I got that wrong, didn't I? AJ, thank you. I knew it was close. I talk to 1,000 people a day. But no, the world of writing is interesting. It happened to me by accident. For those that don't know how I got started, I wrote my first story on an internet forum, just for my entertainment. It was just fun for me. And it took on a life of its own. And people were pushing me to publish it, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to publish this. I'm not a writer. No one's going to pay money for this stuff. But they were very persistent, and they pushed me to do it, and I can't be happier that they did what they did, because it brought me to where I am today. And it's let me meet a lot of these folks up here and make friends with a lot of you guys out there. I communicate with people all over the country, all over the world on a daily basis. Who am I? Go away.
You didn't introduce yourself.
I said my name was Chris and I'm an alcoholic. What else do you want? I also go by the name A American or Angry American, and he knows that.
I do, but they don't.
And I don't like to toot my own horn. It's not my way. I'd rather make fun of them.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were serious. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But I wrote the first and second books I wrote completely online. People were reading them as I wrote them and following along, making comments, and it was a lot of fun. And then we started publishing, and now I'm 9 books deep in the Survivalist series with a total of 15 novels that are out there. And I'm working on 4 right now. I know that the North American semi-hairless Sasquatch is somewhere in the audience. He's out there. Where's he at? He's hiding. Anyway, me and Alan Kay, a lot of you know him, me and Alan Kay are currently working on a book together as well. It's going to be more of a instructional manual wrapped inside of some life lessons, some story as well. I think this is going to be a phenomenal book because for those of you that know Alan, you know that he is a very interesting and deep individual. And he and I are great friends. I love him like a brother. And I can't wait to do this project with him, along with the other ones I'm doing. Like, I don't have enough to do. But it's going to be something special when it comes out. And I met Jan when I moved up here to North Carolina. I used to live in Lenore. And I used to be a customer at the store. When she figured out what I did, she started stocking the books and invited me to HLS. I think it was 6 years ago. Was it the first time I was here? About 6 years ago? And I think she invited me to come to HLS because of how much money I was spending in the store. She wanted to keep me close. Because Lord knows she's made more off of me than I've made off of her. But I love her and Bill to death. They're great folks. They're providing an awesome service, and there's not enough people like them in our country that provide what they provide to the communities.
Yeah.
Because where I live, you cannot walk into a store and buy the kind of products that they carry and find the kind of knowledge that they have on their bookshelves and that they have in their heads. I mean, these aren't people that are looking to make money off of their community. They're providing a service not just in the products that they sell, but the knowledge and the education that they provide. They're fantastic people, and that's why I keep coming back too. And like others have said up here, we've met a lot of friends here. I see Ollie sitting out here in the audience. He lives down near where I live, and he's all the way up here to attend this event. I met guys from Melbourne. I've met guys from Cape Canaveral up here. I've met, they live down where I live, and they've come this far to an event like this because you cannot find gatherings of these kind of people, us, to share this kind of knowledge in enough places in the country. And so it's phenomenal what they're doing. And again, I can't thank them enough. But the last thing I'll mention is for the survival series, those that know what it is, I've been talking for a few years about a TV show. There's a lot of momentum on that right now. I'm hoping to have some major announcements coming about in June. The TV show is going to happen. It will become a reality. And it's going to be done right because I'm being a real pain to those involved and making sure it stays that way. So, and I want to thank all these guys for being here too. This is a great group, especially Lisa. She put together the DD12 thing. She brought all these authors together. If you've looked at that Facebook page, it's complete unorganized chaos. But there's some great authors there. There's a lot of great readers there. They share information. And more importantly, they're connecting with each other. They're finding out that I'm not the only one that thinks this way near me. And they're letting them make connections. Because one of the hardest things to do, as everyone here knows, is to find like-minded people that think the way you do and have the same values as you. Because it's hard to vet folks in that manner. And this is just a good way of doing it. So not only is DD12 providing a lot of entertainment, it's connecting people together and making networks start and groups form and things like that. So that's awesome. It's really good. I'm not going to hold it against Doug that he is a friend with Jeff Hopp, which I am too. Me and Jeff are great friends. We got into publishing at the exact same time, and he's a great guy. If you haven't read his stuff, check him out. You won't be disappointed. And then, and yeah, he's DD12 too. You go to DD12, you'll see it. He's there as well. And then the rest of these hillbillies up here. So anyway, that's all I got. I'm not going to take up no more time. So thanks for coming, everybody, and let's give Bill and Jan another little round of applause. And all the HLS
Now, Yeah, install. A lot of these authors have one thing in common. Why are you pointing there? I got this. I got it. A lot of these authors have one thing in common. And that's the next guy I'm going to introduce. Because how many of you listen to audible books, audio books? How many of you listen to them? Love that. Okay. Check it out. Right on. I do too. The next guest I'm going to introduce is Mr. Kevin Pierce, the narrator of most of these books.
I feel better if I can be back kind of behind there. It makes a lot more sense. You're a lot more likely
But say a little about yourself.
to. A little about
What's your favorite color?
No, turn on the script. You don't know what to say.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless I've got one of these typing for me, I have no thoughts of my own. I think Lisa had said voice of the apocalypse. I think tonight I'll consider it spokesman for the apocalypse. Will that work when we do that? I'm an audiobook narrator full-time. I specialize in this wonderful world of post-apocalyptic science fiction. And I'm having an absolute blast working with, I think, most of the folks up here. And still, so even after they've had a chance to get to know me, we're still working together. And I hope to work with more. But it's also a pleasure to meet the folks who are doing the listening and to see how many of them there are. That's a treat too. And now I'll go back to the voice that you can't see.
How many of you are from west of the Mississippi? How many's come west of the Mississippi? Wow. Awesome. Where are you from? Oklahoma. Oklahoma. Where are you from? Oklahoma. Where are you from? Seattle. Wow. Can anybody beat Seattle?
What are you looking for?
There you go. I'm just wondering how far somebody traveled. What's the longest? I guess we'll start some question and answers. When we get through the question and answer, we're going to have the godfather of these people.
Yeah, I got
come up and talk. The master of disaster will be up here. Scariest man in the world. And just so you know, if anything goes down, I'm getting with Kevin because he knows everything that's in all of these books. He's on my team. Y'all pick somebody else. He's on my side.
We say the knowledge is miles wide and inches deep.
Anybody have a question for any of these fine people?
Look, they're all scared. Come on, man.
What advice would y'all give AJ on how to deal with negative reviews?
Laugh at them and share them with your friends.
Don't even read them.
Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah, don't even read them. You know, you cannot please all the people all the time. And if someone doesn't like your stuff, who cares? I was at an event in Denver where I was giving away copies of my book when I first got started. I gave somebody a signed copy. They came back the next day, dropped it on the table, and they're like, "I cannot read this." And I picked it up. I threw it over my shoulder. I said, "Next." I didn't care what she had to say. You know, everybody's a critic, and if they don't like it, that's fine. You know, don't even hurt my feelings. Don't make me feel bad. But I will tell you this: a 1-star review from someone who's very liberal will drive sales up. I had somebody call me a reactionary, racist, right-wing extremist, and my sales went boop. So it was pretty good.
I guess there's some truth in wisdom they say. All
You'll have to come on down.
As long as you spell your name right.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen and authors, have you found since that 2012 that prepping has not and was not mainstream, that since the release of all of your books, that means all of you together, that you have been able to push prepping into the mainstream, and if you found that your message has been getting across to a more effective and broadband audience?
Well, I'll say this.
Of course you will.
Says the guy who's never short of something to say, whether we want to hear it or not. When Obama was elected, and I bet Jan could probably vouch for this on her sales totals, prepping went through the roof. The world was going to end. Fast forward a few years, Trump gets elected. And it did the same thing in reverse. It fell off a cliff. Everybody thinks that since Trump was elected, we're all saved and nothing is going to happen. The exact same threats exist today that existed then. Nothing has changed, and anyone who stops prepping simply because of the change of hats in Washington is very, very foolish. I would say keep going, don't slow down, you know. Again, all things in moderation. Don't forget to live life for today. That's very important. It's something I like to stress. Because if things ever do go south, you're going to want these good memories like this one here tonight to look back on and think about, because you won't have them, you know, if anything terrible ever does happen. So live life, but keep prepping, you know, every day. Do a little something, whatever it is. I was talking with somebody today who's getting into prepping, and I told him every step you take now puts you one step ahead of everybody else. That's just the way you do this. It's a journey. It's one step at a time. Every step you take, that much farther ahead.
Yeah, and this is also more of winning people over one at a time, because we don't have any overall large picture of the effect that our books are having. But what I see is the emails that I get from people and the Facebook messages from people and the people I see here who say, your books made me make sure I park at night with a full tank of gas, or your books had me carry in a get home bag with me. Those are things that we like to hear that show that at least one person at a time you're having a little impact on folks.
Yeah. How many, and I'll throw this in because I'm a reader.
How many people's first book in prepping in the post-apocalyptic world was 1 second after? Wow. Okay. Now, let me tell you something about 1 second after, and about Dr. Fortune, who's coming up here, and about the people that's up here in front of us. Because I'm a reader from way back. I started prepping in August of 1985. Does anybody know what happened in August of 1985? 1985. No, the movie Red Dawn. Movie Red Dawn come out.
Yeah.
Used to, you could not buy Dr. Fortune's books, James Wesley Rawls, or anybody sitting up here unless you went to the back of a Soldier Fortune magazine and looked at the ad for Paladin Press. And it was like buying porn. It'd come to your house in the brown paper wrapper, and it's like you had to go in the room and open it up. Oh man, I've got this book. Dr. Forston made it go to Main Street. You can now go into a B. Dalton's or Books A Million or wherever and buy these people's books. And that is the barrier that he broke, and that they are coming up in and pushing forward on and helping us learn more. That's all I got to say right now. Another question? Okay.
I've read all, most of the authors sitting up there. Had a chance to actually meet them and talk to them. And one of them mentioned something. I asked him a question: how do you research your characters? And he said, "Blank. I talk to people like me. My background, stuff like that, is in survival and prepping. I'm not an expert by any matter. I was trained by the military to do it, and I carried it on in my civilian world. Do all the authors up here do the same thing? That's the process when you get like your technical aspects of your books. I found them to be straight on, right on point, especially with the description of equipment or lack of description of equipment, let their mindset, stuff like that. Do you interview other people like that? Is that how you did it?
My answer is probably not going to answer your question exactly, but when I go to research characters, you know, of course, this is my introduction to this prepping community. So my to answer, the answers to your question, I'm looking for them too. But with researching my characters, to make sure that they're, well-developed characters, one thing my mother used to always say is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So a lot of my research is actually reading historical books and biographies and studying the way other people have reacted to apocalyptic situations. Like my favorite one to research is the Black Plague. It wiped out a lot of people, just like, what we write about. But it was, it was a totally different situation, but the aftermath was essentially the same. The way people reacted to, and interacted with each other is going to be the same way we're going to react with each other. So that's what I do, is I do a lot of historical research.
I got one little thing to add to that. And we do talk to folks like you. That's one of the reasons we go around and do a lot of these shows, and a bunch of us travel and do these shows together. And we get a lot of information from you folks, but we also cross-pollinate amongst ourselves. One cool thing that's we've all learned about this genre is that we're not competitors. It's a rising tide floats all boats. We help each other out. That's why we join these groups and we interact with each other. We come to these events, we all hang out together, and it's not just for the good time aspect of it, but we learn a lot from each other. We talk about these things in depth, in person and online, and with you guys. There's a lot of you guys come out and hang out with us when we camp out here, and we get a lot from each other, you guys, and people all across the country, in addition to our own research. But the cross-pollinating with each other and with other groups across the country is kind of the number one aspect, at least as far as I see it.
Of all of you that are out there, how many of you can say that you're the best person you know, as far as you know you better than you know anybody else? I mean, that's probably everybody, right? Very seldom are you going to run into somebody that knows somebody, their son or their aunt or uncle, better than they know them their own selves. I draw my own self from my characters. How many of you got a dark, like an antagonist inside of you that you kind of keep under submission, whether it's by use of coffee or joining the Navy or something like that? So I draw myself, my own experience for the use. Like I was a marksmanship instructor my last year in the Marines. Being a marksmanship instructor kind of gave me a lot of intel on the M16A2 service rifles, 9mm pistols, shotguns, that kind of thing. And as I became more and more pro Second Amendment, and I grew in my knowledge of the Constitution, I got into more weapons. I'm 46 now, which I mentioned earlier, so there's a whole lot more advancements in the Colt style rifle. But when I started writing books, I drew on that information, and I almost became too tedious in my description of the weapons that was being used. And I would meet people at book signing events, or I would read reviews, which I hate. I learned not to read reviews, by the way. They hurt my feelings. Cut my mic. No. So I mentioned I was a law enforcement officer for 10 years. I was in the Marines for 4 years. I've been in municipal, state, county, federal government. So I draw on that information to write my books. One of the things that I do also is, like, if I have a character, I'm not going to have one character be a Marine, an officer, a sheriff's deputy, all these things, because I can save one character as a Marine, another character as a law enforcement officer, and I've already gleaned from myself and built two characters off of that. And that's how I do it. And just to answer your question a little bit more clearly, I no longer am so descriptive of my weapons no more, because I will say a rifle, and kind of sometimes I'll mention a weapon precisely, an M4 or something. But I want to leave a lot of that to the reader's imagination. I don't want to write so much details that you don't use your imagination. And again, I'm not saying that's not good, because that's a writing style, and you would enjoy that kind of writing style, but that's not my writing style. I will use some details, but other times I won't. So I hope that answered your question, at least from my perspective.
I'll say for me, I have a cadre of folks that I pull information from, if it's of a technical nature, that are subject matter experts, because I don't consider myself an expert on anything. So I do have folks that I'll reach out to for technical details, but I'll give you guys all a word of warning that when you're talking to these authors up here, You never know when you may find yourself in one of these books, because I've seen it happen.
Yeah, I would like to add to that that I look for characters while I'm here constantly. In fact, my book Grace Under Fire that came out last fall happens to have a character named the Mad Mick, which may be a coincidence, or it may not, Richard.
Thanks. And truth is always stranger than fiction. You can't make up the best stuff. You just can't make it up. So I wanted to throw that out there. I like to say I write faction, because for people and things and personalities, the best ones are real ones, because you just can't make some of that stuff up.
So a little while earlier, I raised my hand as the Seattleite. Yes, I'm a left coast refugee. Okay. I don't know how many people from here hang out back there, but I got disgusted with back there, and my invention of the Kimberly Wood stove gave me the opportunity to start traveling the country and coming to shows like this. Is my first time here, and I'm truly delighted with the group, the manners of the children here. I mean, just what a beautiful scenario this has been, and for a first-time visit, thank you so much. Having said that, I hate seeing the division between left and right coasts. It drives me nuts. It's very sad.
If you'd shape up, it wouldn't be long. Just saying.
I agree. Musicians and writers, often, songwriters, often can give a message. Is there a message you can add to your writing that maybe we can help bridge this gap?
Anyone have a bridge over troubled waters?
I'm going to throw out the message, the overall theme and message in my writing is self-reliance. That you are responsible for you and your family, both their actions and their lives. Number one. Well, that doesn't flow with the left. And I don't want a left-right division, but a prime example of where the problem really lies is, I don't remember the senator's name, but some Rhode Island senator was just caught on tape when a reporter said to him, the Second Amendment needs to be respected, and on camera he told the guy, F off. You know, I mean, that was a Democratic senator from a very liberal state said that to a constituent. That's the problem. We're not the ones, in my opinion, drawing the line, though we need to be careful that we are not the ones that are drawing these lines. We are under attack. There's no doubt about that. Currently in our society, we are the ones under attack. Our values, our thoughts, what we hold dear is under attack. People want to take it from us. We're not trying to tell anybody else how to live their lives, though there are elements among the right that do the very same thing. But I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today where I was saying, everybody's griping about Yeti coolers. A lot of you may have heard the controversy about Yeti coolers. It's not pro-Second Amendment and this and that. And Yeti coolers came out and discontinued a little discount they offered to the NRA. And I said, we're no better than the left if we're going to gripe about something like that. Yeti didn't come out and say we're anti-Second Amendment. They just said we're canceling this little discount that we offered, among many others. And we're no better than the left if we want to fuss about that kind of thing. So we just need to be careful about what we say, because otherwise we're just going to become what we're against. That's all I want to say about that.
If anybody, for those of you that have purchased my book, first of all, thank you. But I've signed all of my books exactly the same way, and it's my personal philosophy, and it's also my prepping philosophy, and that is, above all else, be kind. Because we have to be, in the world like that, in a world like that, we have to be the change that we want to see in the world. And that's true even today, that the philosophy that, you know, that I have for when I'm stuttering, I'm so sorry. If I find myself in a situation like that, my first priority, my first rule is if a supplies or a location or a shelter has been claimed by someone else, don't take it. It's not yours. And I lost my train of thought. Be kind. That's just
But in the words of Mad Dog Mattis, be kind, but have a plan to kill everybody you meet.
Hey guys, my question is about your reviews, but it's not for you guys, it's for all of you. Do all of you write a review for their books you read?
Yes.
Say yes, say yes. This is, I think that's one of the most important things as a reader is to write a review. And if you have a bad review, I send an email or a message and let them know what my problem is with it before I write something bad, because I was born and raised in San Diego and I lived in Bellevue,
Sorry.
Washington. I know. I lived in Bellevue, Washington twice, which is right next to Seattle. So I know what it's like on the other side of the Mississippi. And I'm glad I live in Tennessee because it's great. But I enjoy your books. He lives right down the road from me.
Sorry.
We love our tax-free state.
But I have enjoyed your books. And in fact, when you guys started this group, it was the first time. Now, I'm going to be 63 this year, and I've been prepping since 1972. But this is the first time I have been around like-minded people, and it's wonderful. And then seeing you all together and all these people, thank you.
Just to reinforce the review thing, in today's literary world, the measure of success of a writer is the number of reviews they have on Amazon. Now, 3 years ago, when Bill Forston was here, me and him were talking, and I was coming close to catching him. I was coming close to catching 1 second after the reviews. And I said that to him. He's like, I know, I'm watching. And then Amazon deleted 4,000 of my reviews. And me and Bill need to have a conversation.
Hi, I'm really happy to see all my favorite authors here. Thank you so much for coming. And Mr. Pierce, thank you as well. My question is, as far as your writing process, how do you start your process? Do you free write? Do you dictate, voice recordings? How do you do it?
Everybody answer that one, just start at the end.
All right. I'm a little bit nervous up here, so if I stutter or suddenly go silent, just flip, oh, that helps.
We have a licensed massage therapist here.
So, about my writing process, I can say for me, I've kind of tested things out to find out what I can do and push the limits on word counts for myself. But my process is I usually get a note card out, or just a piece of paper out, and I'll write down plot points for a chapter. I want this to happen, and it's just simple, like one sentence on what it is. And then I set a timer. I write for 25 minutes, and then I take a 5-minute break. Even if I don't feel like I need to take a break, I take that break, because what I found out is that enforced break, it lets my mind kind of backfill the rest of what I'm going to write down. And I do that off and on. If I get, and I call them writing sprints. If you get 10, 12 writing sprints in, I can average pretty decent word count. But when my hands start hurting, or days that I'm not, really feeling all that great, I can, I do dictate. So I use a recorder most of the time when I'm, like on a trip like this. I'm coming up from Michigan, so 10.5 hours of recording time potentially, and that's coming down. Well, sorry, I'm gonna fall off the edge.
Oh, he's coming up from Hell, Michigan, right?
Yep, right outside of Pinckney. But and I'll dictate sometimes too, and that for me is kind of how I get it. 25 minutes at a time with that enforced break, and then I'll take a lunch break somewhere in the middle. So research, like if I get to a point where I need to stop something for research, I'll just write like an all block cap somewhere, come back later, fill this in. And I just keep going, because if I don't get that first draft out, if you don't get that first draft done, you've got nothing to edit, nothing to rewrite, nothing to add to. So for me, it's trying to get it out first and then going back in and filling in more details.
My process is no process. I don't have one. I write when the mood strikes, and all I do is try to chase the characters around in my head and keep up with them. So, I mean, that's really it. My story kind of writes itself. That's what I tell folks, and I just try to keep up. And I might write it, 10 in the morning or 2 in the morning. It depends on when it hits and how long it goes for. And so, yeah, they're really in the process for me. And I type everything. I don't dictate nothing. I tried that. It didn't work. I didn't like listening to myself. Y'all probably don't want to either. But I just got to type it, so.
I write, and then I write some more, and then I write again, and then when I'm done with that, I write. If you're going to be a writer, you're going to write, and that is the way to become a writer. I started as a pantser, which means you sit down in a chair and you just write by the seat of your pants, but I got tired of having to go back and fix things that I had not plotted out or planned out. And so now I really and truly, probably a combination. I have a loose outline or a loose idea of where I want to be at certain page numbers, and then I let the characters help me get there.
I start by, I write it out like I'm trying to tell somebody what the story is. Okay, she goes over here and she does this thing. I don't know what happens in this part, but I'll figure that out later. And one thing that I did do that a lot of people don't agree with this, but it actually helped me. There's an old quote. It's attributed to Hemingway, but I don't think he really said it. It said, "Write drunk and edit sober." And
That was Boyd that said that.
I got about a third of the way through my first draft, and I hit a wall. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know what happened next, and I was stuck in that spot for 3 months. And I remembered that quote, and I was like, you know what? I'll try it. So I sat down to my computer by myself. It was just me and a bottle of Moscato. I drank the whole thing by myself, and it helped me because I'm very self-critical, and I stopped myself, and that helped me, loosen my inhibitions, and it lubricated my mind, and I was able to break through that writer's block and finish the rest of the book, and that's gonna be my go-to plan from now on. I mean,
we can definitely instruct you in the art.
That particular night, I only wrote for about an hour or so. The rest of the night, I was dancing in the kitchen.
What brand?
I think it was Barefoot. It was cheap, $12.
When I write, it's kind of like Chris. It's just when it comes to me, I start writing. And when I wrote my first book, sometimes I was sitting at the Subway eating lunch, so I had my little phone and I was typing away, or I was out on a job site and the crew didn't have to have me at that moment, so I snuck in the truck and I started typing. And when someone would come up and need a question, I'd stop. Sometimes it was at midnight, sometimes it was early in the morning. So it's just when it hit me. I'm not organized like some of these guys. I just knew I had certain subjects, certain topics I wanted to cover in the book, and I just like I said, let the characters flow until you covered it. Just make sure that it was covered.
And it's not linear either. I jump around through different parts.
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
Okay, when I write, it starts out with an outline, all the way from the beginning of the series to the end. It takes me a long time to get from the beginning of a series to an end. In this one, I'm only in 2 books, but in the other series, there's 4. And once I hit the outline, then I have to break that up into books. If anybody has seen my office wall on my Facebook page, they'll say I do it with index cards, and I go through and I detail characters.
Well, you're one of those.
I'm one of those. And you don't want to look too closely or you'll see spoilers. Don't be zooming in on it, because if they have little X's on them, that means that they didn't last long. But my writing is it's like a faucet. I was explaining to someone just today. It's drip, drip, drip until something actually just clicks, and then it's just full throttle. So the first novel I put out was not post-apocalyptic. It's psychological fiction. I wrote it in 6 weeks. Next one took 9 months. The next one took, 10 or 12 months. This last one I wrote, which was book 2 of the post-apocalyptic, was 6 weeks. So I'm waiting for the click. Until then, it's drip, drip, drip. But when the click happens, I disappear from the world, and I just disappear into the book. And many people close to me will tell you that they'll ask me questions about the book later, and I don't even remember writing it. It's as if I become the characters, and then they're writing it. I'm just writing down what they're telling me, and then it just disappears. So to go back to write again, I have to either listen to parts of the book or read parts of the book again to remind me. But it's a very disorganized process, but it works for me. Except for when everyone says, when's the next book? When's the next book? When's the next book? Is it ready yet? Are we there yet?
Okay, so for me, the first book popped into my head and it just flowed. And it got to about the point where it was almost done and I hit a wall. And I had no idea where I was going to go. So I started, I went and I hit Google. What do you do when you hit a wall? And somebody said, write the last chapter. So I wrote the last chapter. I decided how the book was going to end, and I knew where it started, and I knew where it was going to end, and then all of a sudden everything just kind of filled in. Well, that was the first book. Once I realized that I wanted to do a series, like, oh God, now I got to go back through and remember what this person said, what their nuances were, what was he wearing, what was his nicknames. I don't remember any of this stuff. So now I got to go back through, and now I got to create an outline. And that was the hardest thing to do. So when you're doing a series, it gets more and more complicated. So now I've got Excel spreadsheets. Every single chapter has a synopsis. Every single chapter I keep track of each individual chapter with how many words are in them. And that also helps me keep track of how many words I do a day. So it was a lot easier with one book. And now I'm almost through the ending of the fourth one. And I don't know, I don't think it's going to get any easier.
It don't. Thanks.
One thing I think you notice from all of us is that there's no set standards, there's no rhyme or reason. We all just got our own way of doing things, and whatever works, works. For me, I'm not a literary person at all, even though I'm on my 11th book. My grandmother, she wrote a few books, and as soon as she passed away, it's like it jumped into my head, and all of a sudden I had some stories in my head that had to get out, and I had no idea where they came from. And I wrote my first book, that last labor book, on a cell phone. While I was commuting to work in the back of an airplane, or sometimes I had to ride the jump seat in the cockpit, and I was bored, had to kill time. So I just sit there in my little Tyrannosaurus Rex arms in the middle seat, with just my thumbs typing away on the cell phone. And that just kind of spawned it for me. But there's a lot of people who probably noticed as they read my books, they saw probably an evolution of the writing as it goes. Now I've got to the point now where the stories just jump in my head. They decide what I'm going to write next. That book, Erebus, the most recent release, the crazy one in Antarctica, that entire book wrote itself in my mind while I was working on Viking 1, and it was beating on the door to get out. So as soon as I finished Viking 1, I just sat down and started watching the movie in my head and just described what I saw. And that's almost literally how it went. And right now, when I'm working on Society Lost 3, I've got a Western, a sci-fi, and 2 more prepper books. They're all fighting, for that next place in line. So that's almost literally the truth for me. I don't sit down and try to think, what am I going to do next? There's a line in my head, and they're fighting over position.
Characters keep you up at night?
So I'm kind of the collection of all these guys put together. I'm kind of happy to hear that I thought I was alone in the way that I write. I already mentioned that I was laying on my bed one night, and this story came in my head, and I opened up a Microsoft Word document, and I will just put down there a couple paragraphs, my story, my complete story in a nutshell. All right, and I put the cursor back above that, and I just start writing. I got a starting point in my mind, I got an ending point in my mind, and every time I add something to that Microsoft Word, it just pushes the nutshell, the entire context of my story right down. So I'm always close to my notes as it's kind of going down, down, down. So he does the same thing. He says, it's always right there. I write what he mentioned organically. I write organically. I have, like I said, starting point in my head and ending point in my head. I write towards that end point. When I came up with the Tyrant series, I knew that I couldn't put it all together in one book, so I just started writing, and I didn't know how many books it would take. By the time I was almost done with book 3, Endgame, I realized that the story was coming to a head and there's going to be a climactic ending. I just went ahead and finished it off. That book was a little bit thicker than the other 3 books, but I didn't have enough storyline to make a 4th book, at least not with the characters that were in the main trilogy. But as I write, I kind of develop situations that I put the characters into, kind of randomly, because I believe that life is kind of random. You know, if any Bible readers in here, you know, the Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust, right? So things just kind of, it happens to everybody. It doesn't matter how good you are, how bad you are. Things happen to good people, you know, whether you're good or bad. Everybody gets the same share of rain. It just happens. So I write like that, and sometimes my characters are written into situations where, oh, I really didn't want to lose that character, but there's no way that they can get out of it. So I have to be, if I don't want that character to die, I have to be careful how I write. Or I can go back, I can flip-flop some characters, but generally I'm happy with the flow of my story and the way that I put it out. So I'm more likely to change the characters around and put them in different positions than I am to just do a rewrite. I'm generally, like I said, very happy with what I got. So, and to me, when something is random like that and you suddenly lose a character that's not a main character, but just an important character, that to me, as if I was reading that, would snatch on to me, you know, like, oh, if that guy can die, then this guy can die, you know, and that kind of keeps the reader, you know, on the seat of the, you know, the chair, just kind of reading the, what's that? Yeah, so, I mean, we're writing post-apocalyptic books, right? So the gist of this is, it's the apocalypse, and eventually everybody's going to die. We got this die-off situation, so, you know, the end, yeah, so.
Everybody dies.
We got to carry this out. Spoiler alert! Don't go to the back of the book. But yeah, that's how I write, and you know, like I said, it's just kind of a collection of all these guys together. But it's worked for me, and I'm going to keep doing that until I find a better way.
This will be short and sweet. I start with a character. My books are character-based. I start with a character that I like. I put them in a situation, I do a brief outline of that, and then I try to do 3,000 words a day on that character, that situation, until it's all wrapped up. And Richard, I know you're ready to go here. Appreciate you, man.
I want to ask, pass the mic to Kevin, if you would. Now, the question was about how they write. Tell us a little bit about how you record what they write.
Always starts with reading the book all the way through, paying special attention in that read through, obviously the plot, because it's important to know how the story goes, who the characters are, what they're like, any kind of clues I've been given to what they might sound like, because I'm going to be responsible for that, and any, I like to think of them as landmines, proper nouns, any town names, base names, persons' names, and these things, you know, depending on where you are in the country, if they were in my part of Florida, well, I'm going to be pretty comfortable with all those odd, strange names, or those names that would be odd and strange to you, but they're well known to me. But if the book is suddenly set in Pacific Northwest, or lovely North or South Carolina, or Virginia, there are going to be place names, park names, institution names, that the biggest trap is the word that I think I know, but I don't, so I get it wrong. And we've got, we employ people called proofers who follow along behind, and I try to find people who are really just absolute sons of bitches at calling me out on pronunciations of things. I'm not sure about this, they'll say. This was a proper name, I'm not sure you got that right.
I've got your number, I'll call.
But so that pre-read is very important to get started, and then it's, you know, I try to get a couple hours a day of finished recording done, which takes pretty much the entire day. Because I make a lot of mistakes. And an average book is about a week to get it done. Proofer would go through for a listen. The author or publisher may or may not do a little bit of a review. And then I'm wrapped up and on to the next one. And I told somebody today, one of the tragic parts of being a full-time audiobook narrator, I don't get to read for pleasure anymore. And I used to be just a voracious reader. I read all the time. I always had multiple books going. And now that I do this full time, I'm either reading the book that I'm going to be reading, or I'm reading the book that I'm reading. And that's, It ends up being pleasurable, but it's done for work. I didn't get to choose it as just a nice pursuit, something I'm going to read to go to bed tonight. So that's the process.
Ask him about that rubber room in his house where he does the recordings.
Got just a few seconds. We're over. I apologize, Dr. Fortune, if you're out there, I apologize. Never had this many authors on stage at one time. Gotta tell a story, if you don't care, about the hurricane.
Oh, well, yeah, preparedness. Where does that fit into the scheme? We, living in coastal Florida, Hurricane Irma came right through the backyard. House was fine, all the people were fine, we did well, but the electricity was out for 2 weeks. And it's not a crisis, but it's a spectacular inconvenience. It's just a really long time in hot, steamy southern Florida to not have air conditioning. Did of course have a generator that we could use, and after the first week without power, realized that I needed to get back to work. And these folks were waiting to get their books done. So I, with a generator, powered the studio back up, hotter than hell, just wore a pair of shorts to go in, and sweat my way through an R.E. McDermott book, which was about a natural disaster taking down the power grid and making fuel scarce, which I read after a natural disaster had taken down the power grid and made fuel scarce. And it was just a perfect, okay, this is a good thing. But I got 3 hours of that book done on generator power after Hurricane Irma. So not only was the family reasonably well prepared, but the studio was pretty well prepared too.
All right, let's give them all a big hand.